It has been an anxious night for thousands of people across New South Wales as those evacuation warnings stay in place for areas west of Sydney, and the floodwaters continue to make their presence felt in areas across regional New South Wales. The Bureau of Meteorology is saying that flooding in parts of the Hawkesbury-Nepean River system through Sydney's west has reached levels not seen since 1961. The Nepean River peaked at just over 10 metres on Sunday night, with major flooding occurring in North Richmond and more expected at Windsor and Sackville later today. Penrith on the Nepean has recorded nearly 85 millimetres of rain in the last 24 hours, while Kempsey on the mid-north coast has chalked up nearly 180 millimetres. The State Emergency Service has received nearly 10,000 calls for help since the flood emergency began. I'm coming to you from Port Macquarie, where they are still keeping an eye on the floodwaters. You can see the Hastings River behind me here, an area north in Kempsey, also of great concern this morning. But we are also keeping a very close eye on what's going on west of Sydney, and Ruby Cornish is there in Penrith. Good morning, Ruby. What can you tell us?
Good morning, Lisa. Well, I'm down here on the banks of the Nepean River in Penrith in Western Sydney, and now that it's light, you can really see sort of what we're dealing with here. As you say, the river peaked at just over 10 metres last night, which was higher than the 1961 flood peak and also higher than what was expected. You can see where the flood peaked on the ground here, the debris on the shore. So it is dropping. It's at about 8 metres now. So that is good news that it's dropping, but it's been a very stressful night for residents here. There have been evacuation orders in place since yesterday afternoon. Many people left yesterday. They were told to move their possessions to higher ground and go and stay with a family member or a friend, or failing that, heading to an evacuation centre. We have a few evacuation centres in this vicinity. Some houses in the lower lying areas close to the river were inundated. We've seen images of street signs where you can only see the top of the sign, which gives you an idea of just how deep it was. Some of the sandbagging that's been going on today, people are preparing for the rain to continue. I spoke to some people in this area who were preparing to evacuate. They said they'd never seen anything like this before. Let's hear from them.
We've only been here for the last 3 years, so it hasn't at the moment, no. No, I haven't heard of it flooding here before. They're taking the girls just for the safety.
We saw the level of the water coming up pretty quickly the last 24 hours, more so the last say 10 hours or so. And we spent a lot of time today working really hard with friends and neighbours to move lots of things away from the water.
I've lived here 20 years and this is the first time we've had to evacuate.
Lisa, here on the Nepean Hawkesbury River system between Penrith and Sackville, this is a really volatile area because all of the rain that falls in the catchment has to come through here to get to the ocean, and there are pinch points along the way that slow the water down. Although we've had the peak here at Penrith, we're expecting it to be worse downstream at places like Windsor and Sackville later today. Upstream at the Warragamba Dam, that is spilling over. It has been spilling over since about 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, and that's just going to continue sending millions of litres of water into this river system. And of course the Colo River coming from the west into the Hawkesbury, that is experiencing major flooding. It could reach about 14 metres or more later tonight.
So what does that mean for everyone in the area? What are we expecting during the day, Ruby?
Well, we've heard from the Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, that there could well be more evacuation orders issued depending on how the situation unfolds. We've heard from the Bureau of Meteorology that there will be more rainfall. It hasn't stopped raining since I got here this morning, and it rained all night. It will continue to rain as we've got this trough moving from inland as well towards us that will collide with this weather system and create an even further flood risk. So people in this area are preparing to leave. They're all on standby. It's pretty quiet at the moment because so many people have left. There are people busy sandbagging their homes and businesses, anticipating, further inundation. But, we heard from the mayor here just earlier, and she said that everyone's hoping the worst is over. The SES is telling people to please listen to those announcements, keep across them, because things can change very quickly, and not to drive through floodwaters or spectate from the sidelines, because it could create an emergency situation that takes resources away from where they're really needed.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ruby. We'll touch base with you a little bit later. We can talk about how much rain's falling. We can talk about how high the rivers are. We can talk about the numbers and the data. But this is a very human story. I want to introduce you to someone here, a Port Macquarie local, Nathan Tomkins. G'day, Nathan.
Good morning.
It's sad news that you've had. Your restaurant's been destroyed. Can you tell us what's happened?
The Friday night, the water came up after all the rain and so forth, and basically the water just went right through and just destroyed everything. There's nothing left. I've just come from there now, thinking that I'll be able to get out there and try and get a strategy involved to work out how we're going to come back from this. So I've just taken my builder and so forth to try and get out there, but the water's still way too high at the moment. Which is, and there's more weather on its way, which is, I just don't know when this is going to end. It's just like a nightmare. It really is. It's, it's one of those things where I'm feeling like I'm on a roller coaster ride. I woke up this morning and just pinch myself to go, okay, this is not real, but it's real. And I'm not the only one. I mean, I've got so many friends and family members that are just hurting at the moment from all this, lost their homes, lost their cars, lost their businesses, and how do we come back from it? That's going to be the thing. I haven't got flood insurance, so basically I have to start again, and the community's really got behind me, which has been fantastic. Every single person I see, the phone hasn't stopped ringing to say, look, guys, if you need me, just call me and we'll be there to get you back. The Whalebone Wharf is so iconic. I've been there for 24 years, and it's like my daughter, my son. It's like, it's a part of me, and to see that just all washed away and just it's pretty hard.
The Whalebone Wharf, lots of people have been talking about what a fantastic restaurant it was. 24 years you were there.
Yeah, I've been there, yep.
You've never seen anything like this then?
Never. And it just came up so quick. I mean, we didn't have any sort of pre-warning. I know, like, with Sydney and so forth, they're getting, like Penrith and all that, they're getting warnings saying, okay, guys, you've got to get out, like, we had no time at all. It just came up and just went straight through.
And have you got some idea of what's happened with it? Have you seen pictures
I've
or
been
what?
In, yep.
Yeah. So tell me what happened since the water went through.
So the water went through. I went back through on Saturday at 9 o'clock with my partner. We walked up Hastings River Drive up to our necks in water. I know it's a pretty stupid thing to do, but I just needed some sort of clarity of what was happening in there. And I opened the door and everything is just floating, So I had to leave it at that, and then go away and try and get myself together, be strong for my, I've got 30 staff that, they've got families, they've got livelihoods, and and they are my family. That I really want to make sure that they come out of this just as strongly as I do, which is of great importance to me. And then I went back there again yesterday at around about 12:30, and I met my daughter there. She lives just up the road. There was no water in the restaurant, but if you could imagine the deluge and the sludge and the mess that is in there, it's just heartbreaking. So I went into sort of mode where I need to start contacting people, a project manager, a builder, to get in there today.
And that's what you were hoping to do.
That's
And
what
to give people an idea, this is the Hastings River behind us here, and you're on the river just a 6-minute drive away from here, but you haven't been able to get to that area.
No.
It feels like a mess right now, Nathan, but I reckon you're going to have a lot of people who will want to try and help you get going again.
Yep. My heart goes out to everyone else who's in the same situation as me, and the government's doing a fantastic job, and they got me through COVID, and I'm sure they're going to get me through this as well.
Nathan Tomkins, thanks for coming down and speaking with us this morning. Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, that is a heartbreaking story, especially when people pour their life into their business. It's not just their business, it is their life, and for Nathan, he's seen it washed away.
Your heart bleeds for them all up there. Considering Nathan's obviously had a huge loss today, but the triple whammy a lot of these, especially regional communities, have gone through on the north coast of New South Wales. The Black Summer bushfires really hit hard around that part of the world. Then came COVID, and now comes these floods, which are knocking more businesses out of action. You really have to doff your hat to their resilience, but gee, it must be hard for so many people like Nathan.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. The bushfires, we can't forget about that. We spoke to people earlier who said that they'd struggled through that, and now this. It is a big clean-up for a lot of people. We're in a street where the shops are all sandbagged, so they're preparing for more. Massive clean-up about to unfold. Lisa, thank you. We'll come back to you shortly. Now, residents of southeast Queensland have been warned that more rain is on the way there after a weekend that saw some areas pelted by up to 200 millimetres of rain. Flash flooding is expected across parts of the Gold Coast once again today, as the local council warns residents in low-lying areas to consider moving to higher ground. In the scenic rim, Mount Tamborine recorded almost 150 millimetres of rain just in the last 24 hours, while further south, Springbrook was drenched by 187 millimetres. Meanwhile, in South Australia, no respite there. Residents across the state's outback fear they'll be cut off with more heavy rainfall forecast. The Weather Bureau has issued a flood warning for South Australia's far north, which is set to cop up to 100 millimetres of rain today. And the big question, Nate, is when's it all going to stop?
Not for a couple of days to come, Mike. We've still got hundreds of millimetres on the way. The radar's just been incredible to watch, with, again, hundreds of millimetres falling overnight for parts of the New South Wales east coast and also for the southeast of Queensland. Plenty more on the way as a secondary burst moves through central Australia towards the east. It's going to reinforce those falls. So we've got two sets of warnings on at the moment. One for the east coast for heavy rainfall that could lead to flash flooding through New South Wales, and then a secondary one just a little bit further inland that then extends all the way back into central Australia. This is a significantly large area that's expecting some heavy rainfall that could lead to flash flooding there. And it's going to move into the east. We're expecting still hundreds of millimetres over the next few days for eastern Australia before things really ease for midweek. Now, we could see another 90 millimetres for Brisbane, Michael, after it copped more than 120 since 9 a.m. yesterday, and Sydney could get another 40 to 70.
You know, we've been looking at possible flooding right across New South Wales and into Queensland, and we've got reporters in so many different areas, but there are two that I want to focus on now. We've got Bruce Mackenzie, who is in Kempsey, just north of where I am in Port Macquarie. We've got Tim Swanston, who's in Windsor in northwest Sydney. I want to start with you, Bruce, because we've been hearing from the SES and they've been saying that the levee might breach today. What's that going to mean?
Well, what it means is we could get water into the CBD here at Kempsey. I'm right here on the banks of a very swollen Macleay River. More than 170 millimetres of rain fell in this catchment overnight, and lots of it is sweeping down the river behind me, as you can see. Already got moderate flooding in this district. That could go to major throughout the course of the day, especially if we get another big dump of rain. The river is expected to hit 6.6 metres right about now, and that's a trigger point because that's when it could potentially overtop the levee that protects the Kempsey CBD. The pictures you see behind me might be a little bit misleading because This part of the CBD, you can see the white levee wall in front of it. It's still got about a metre to play with, but that's not the trouble spot. It's just a little bit further upstream and around quite a severe bend in the Macleay River, an area around Eden Street. That's where the water is likely to lap over. That's where we've got evacuation orders for low-lying areas around there and in the Kempsey CBD. Talking to lots of locals, one of them told me the water there is just a few centimetres below the top of the levee, so that'll be a bit of a wait-and-see situation. People here, it's not their first rodeo as far as floods are concerned. They know what to do. They're listening to all the warnings and the emergency services. I had a chat with someone that lives in a unit right here on the riverbank a short time ago. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
I'm feeling all right, but I'm a bit scared that the water might come into the unit and we might have to evacuate. I lived here for a while, but I haven't seen nothing like this. 2001 floods, but this one is worse.
Hey Bruce, we drove down from Coffs Harbour to Port Macquarie yesterday afternoon, but I understand much later after we'd gone through, you did the same drive but from further up the coast. What did you see? What did you make of it?
It was one of the most eerie experiences of my life, especially when I got south of Coffs. The rain was belting down, but the Pacific Highway, this huge piece of infrastructure, this Australia's major road, it was just empty. And I guess the good thing about that is that everyone was taking the advice and delaying anything but absolutely essential travel. But it was such an eerie feeling driving along that major highway and just not seeing another vehicle anywhere. Something I will absolutely never forget.
All right, thanks, Bruce. Hey, Tim, you're there in the west of Sydney area. I think you're on the Hawkesbury River. Can you tell us what you're seeing and just give us an idea of the scene?
Yeah, Lisa, on the Hawkesbury here at Windsor, and now this area is experiencing flooding that it hasn't seen since 1988 at these current levels. Now, one new addition, though, of course, to this area is the new Windsor Bridge behind me, built only some 12 months ago, and it is currently submerged in water. We can see traffic signs behind it that are showing some very serious flooding levels. Now, even driving into Windsor this morning, some low-lying areas are already submerged. There are some evacuation orders out for around areas, so low-lying areas, parts of Richmond, as well as areas of Cornwallis and low-lying parts of Agnes Banks. And people are, of course, coming down and having a look. Some are saying that they haven't seen the river rage like this for a very long time.
And the conditions are expected to get worse later today.
Yeah, Lisa, it's still coming down. We're seeing some rainfall that's just going to continue over the course of the day, and that's really cause for concern here on the Hawkesbury. Although we know that it's sort of peaked further up in North Richmond, it appears that they're suggesting that the river could continue to rise well into the later part of this evening. So, as I'm sure you can imagine, people are quite apprehensive about that. Some 13 metres they think that it could peak at sometime this evening. So there's a lot of concern, and of course a lot of people watching those warnings very closely, especially if they're in low-lying parts of this area.
Yeah, and they can keep watching the ABC and listening to the ABC throughout the day for all of the details. Bruce and Tim, thank you.
The next 24 hours will be absolutely critical in determining just how severe or more serious this flooding event becomes.
Yeah, we were hearing from the Port Macquarie Mayor Peter Pinson just a little while ago, Michael, who was telling us that she didn't want people to become complacent at all because the rain has now stopped here in Port Macquarie, but it's not stopping for long and they are expecting more of it later today, of course, and the area is so wet already that as soon as there's more rain it just adds to that saturated ground. We've seen a few people here this morning, Michael, come down into their restaurants and you know, trying to do a little bit of cleaning up, but I think it's just too early at the moment. Want to find out what is going to happen, though. I'm going to bring in the New South Wales SES Deputy Commissioner Daniel Austin. Good morning, Daniel. You are at headquarters at Wollongong, I understand. Can you tell us what the night has been for you, how many call-outs you've had, how much you've had to sort of get crews out and about?
Yeah, good morning. The last 24 hours has seen, again, over another 2,000 calls as we've seen the rain impact different areas of the state. We've seen in some parts a little bit of a reprieve, and then other parts have been hit pretty hard. So we have a pretty wide area of focus at the moment, all the way from the mid-north coast right the way down into the Sydney metro area. And across the mid-north coast today, we are expecting to see the return of some heavy rainfall in locations. And I heard you make the comment about not being complacent. Whilst we might be seeing some temporary reprieves, we are expecting to see that rainfall come back today and potentially see those rivers come back again.
Because, Daniel, people are going to be tempted to try and get into areas to see what the losses are, and the warnings would be, we've been giving them all morning, don't drive into floodwaters. It must be frustrating for you to see people still doing that.
Yeah, look, we fully appreciate that people are keen to get back, and we are keen to get people back as quickly as is possible. But it's got to be safe. From our perspective, community safety is what we're about. We want to make sure that we do what we can to make sure that we can and help people there. But we don't want people driving back through floodwaters. You've seen the amount of debris and other things coming down these rivers. You've seen the speed the water's moving. And again, yesterday, another 150 flood rescues, for some of those for people that were driving through floodwaters. So, it's not worth the risk to put your own life at risk, but also the life of the rescuers.
Look, I am curious, you've issued a number of warnings for people evacuation. When do they become orders, and is that likely to happen?
Look, so we try to give obviously as much lead time as possible. Now, with the situation that we've seen in places, that's been harder than others. We've seen some really rapid rises that have hit triggers many hours earlier than was forecast only just a little while before. So as we watch those triggers, as we see those things come into play, if there is a need to increase to evacuation orders, it's not a decision we make lightly, but a decision we make with the community's best interest at heart and the community's safety at heart. We won't hesitate to do so. Is there a possibility for more orders? Look, there definitely is. It depends on how the situation unfolds through the day. At this point in time, we think the areas that are likely to be impacted have a level of warning across them already, but we will continue to monitor that situation as we need.
Daniel Austin, thank you.